I recently came across the TV show Peaky Blinders, and I have to say I was fairly impressed by the frame control of the main character, Thomas Shelby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down a few scenes of him with women where his frame control and actually his game is pretty good. And I do want to point out that his frame control across the board is excellent, not just with women. And you can learn a lot from a lot of his behavioral traits. But given the nature of this channel, we're going to pick the scenes with women. So let's get into it right now. So the first scene we're going to look at is between Thomas Shelby and Grace, who later becomes his wife. This is one of the early scenes and one of the first scenes in which they actually have a real connection.
Your clothes, Mr. Shelby.
Just give me a drink.
Okay, one line in, but I do have to point this out. You do not have to respond to every conversational thread, right? Guys make this mistake all the time. A girl asks a question, they think they have to answer it. A girl talks about a thing, they think they have to respond. Oftentimes you do not, and oftentimes it's much more powerful not to.
Shall I leave you alone?
Came here for company.
So this is a pretty simple exchange, but it is useful, right? So when you're dealing with game and girls, you're in this weird paradox in the sense that you're trying to create a connection. You're trying to create an interaction and continue an interaction with a girl, but you're trying to appear non-needy. So whenever anything can happen by accident or without you seeming to try to make it happen, it's good. So in this case, he is going to engage in a lengthy conversation with her, but it's general that he wanted company in general, not I came here to see you. See the difference between I came here for company, as in I didn't want to be alone, versus I came here to see you. One is very needy, the other is I'm just feeling social, or you're just filling this role for me in the moment. It's a subtle difference in frame, but it does make a big difference in terms of the outcome of the interaction and how the whole interaction is viewed.
How's your beautiful horse?
I just put a bullet in his head.
This is a very bizarre kind of an answer, and I think it's actually true in this particular case. Point here is that being shocking can be useful at the start of an interaction. It certainly gets attention.
Was he lame?
He looked at me the wrong way. It's not a good idea to look at Tommy Shelby the wrong way.
So now this is a very interesting point. Obviously, the horse was probably lame. I think that's probably the only reason you shoot your horse in the head. So in a way, it was a dumb question, right? I think she was just making conversation, making small talk. But rather than just answer and stay on small talk, he told a little story or told a little anecdote that conveyed his personality and conveyed his emotions. And that's actually a huge point of good conversation. If someone says, what do you do? And you say, I'm a doctor, that's a boring answer. Someone says, where are you from? And you say, Alabama, that's a boring answer, right? But if you give some kind of a story, some kind of an anecdote, some kind of an emotional bit about yourself that tells, your character, that's much more interesting. And one of the key things that guys fall into with girls over and over again is too much damn boring small talk, right? So he's being very not boring. He's also conveying who he is very quickly. It's actually been said by me and other people that the whole purpose of game, or the whole idea behind game, is conveying who you are as quickly as possible, right? And ideally conveying your best self, but conveying who you are as quickly as possible. He's very much conveying who he is here through what could have otherwise been boring small talk.
In France, I got used to seeing men die. Never got used to seeing horses die.
And again, this is all very dark, but what's he doing? He's telling stories. He's telling his character. He's showing his personality. His personality may be attractive to some people, maybe not to others. This character of being a mobster who has caused a lot of death, right? It's very powerful. It's high value in a way. It's also very scary and dark and not good in a way. But again, he is conveying his personality. And what's he doing? He's telling stories. Stories are absolutely powerful as a means of communication.
Cheltenham's grand affair, is it not?
The king will be there.
Right, and again, indirect answer, right? It's a grand affair, is it not? He could just say yes, which is the king will be there, right? Kind of half sarcastic, as in whether he cares or not that the king is there. But again, more interesting than a direct answer. One huge principle in conversation that I learned from the first book I ever read on conversation is called penetrate the ostensible, meaning don't say the boring thing. Say something 5 to 10% more interesting than the boring thing. Instead of it'll be a grand affair, yes, it'll be a grand affair, the king will be there, right? You've added something to the conversation instead of just a yes. You've added some personality instead of just being boring and predictable.
So what do you sing?
Anything you want?
Right. Get up on a chair.
Happy or sad?
Sad.
Okay. But I warn you, I'll break your heart.
Already broken.
So here, the vibe of being emotionally unaffectable or emotionally unreachable is a very powerful, very high value frame to take. The guy who is easily swayed emotionally is usually a low value guy, is usually a guy who is too into the girl, who's too needy, all this kind of stuff. So being the guy who can't be heartbroken is definitely the better role to take. And to be fair, the guy who would choose the sad song over the happy song is also showing a lot more depth and also a lot more willing to have negative polarity and negative spikes, which are all characteristics of high value guys. So these are subtle high value conveyances as well. This next scene is a little less happy than the previous one because now the criminal has found out that the girl is a police officer and there's this tension between them. But let's see how this plays out.
Tell me you're hurt.
I'm fine.
Just uniform.
Yeah. Someday we'll throw this gun in the canal.
Why not now? Here it comes, Tommy. I love you.
And there it goes, Grace. Away it goes. We can say it as much as we like. But there's no chance.
Oh man. Okay, so this is actually great because I talk a lot about the 3 stages of getting to know someone on a cold approach. Right? The first is I don't like you, I'm not sure if I like you yet. The second is you're winning me over. And then the third is I like you but, or we like each other but. Well, now we're in that third stage here. We like each other but. We like each other but you're the police and I'm a criminal. We like each other but it could never work, right? So there's this tension. Also, in terms of responses to I love you, that has to have been one of the most cold and badass responses to I love you could possibly give. So that's some, that's a baller line right there. But in general, yeah. So now they like each other, but there's tension. And this is a great lesson as well, because if you've ever lost girls in comfort, right? As in like there's this tension between whether you like each other, there's a sexual tension, and then you start just genuinely getting to know each other, you admit you like each other, and then all of a sudden it gets boring. That's because you've lost the tension, right? Remember that third phase, I like you, but. So here's a later scene between the 2 same characters. In this case, they're at Grace's house where Thomas Shelby is hiding out from the police and she's protecting him. So they're kind of forced together by circumstance, but we'll see how things play out.
You want tea?
Tea, no.
I have rum.
Actually, tea it is.
You want to impress me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a really interesting kind of an exchange, and it's all a metaphor, but tea versus rum, right? The type of guy who drinks rum is the type of guy who's wild and crazy and reckless and out of control. The guy who drinks tea is the guy who's more sophisticated, more refined. And you can look at this in a way as value and comfort, right? Not that to say rum is more high value than tea, but it's definitely that sort of irreverent type of value to a greater degree. And as an interaction, as a relationship progresses, at the start, you're doing a lot to convey value. At a certain point in the relationship, you've conveyed enough value, and now you want to be building comfort. And so this whole tea versus rum thing, it's basically him saying, I'm a trustworthy guy, I'm a sophisticated guy, I'm not a guy who's just wild and reckless and has to be drunk all the time, etc., right? And he even can admit that he's trying to impress her, right? Now, it's a little tongue-in-cheek in a way, but it's okay to admit it. It's okay to let the girl win a little bit, right? Now, this is letting the girl win from a position of value and power. If you go in and you start trying to connect with a girl from the very beginning, if she doesn't know you're a high value guy, if she doesn't know you're someone she wants to connect with, she probably won't. But once the girl is actually chasing you, once the girl is actually trying to connect with you and doing work to connect with you, go ahead and let her win a little bit. That's okay.
People look different at home.
In what way?
Off guard.
Should I be on my guard?
No. I'm a man who drinks tea.
Right, and this whole idea of it's okay to be off guard with me, I don't need to be on my guard, right? That's again more building comfort, right? Again, there's that attraction phase up front, that value phase up front. But once that's passed, once the girl's trying to connect with you, the whole point of this, the whole point of game was to connect with the girl. A lot of guys, they get so used to being disqualifying and pushing the girl away and giving them shit, and then the girl tries to connect and they refuse to let her. Well, what was the point? Again, the point of game is for two people to come together. So please let that happen. Don't become that like cocky, arrogant asshole who is just pushing away and just trying to attract your way all the way to the bedroom, all the way to a relationship. It doesn't work. You have to connect as well.
When will it die down, do you think?
Late, I'd say.
So not until the morning, then?
Yes, I'd say I'll be here till morning.
And this is good on a lot of levels, right? Number one, he has the best excuse for staying the night, right? He has the best it just happened excuse you could possibly imagine, which is wonderful. But then they both kind of know what they're talking about. And this is actually how a good pull or how it should go down when you do get back to a girl's place or get a girl back to your place. There should be enough plausible deniability that nobody is saying, oh, we're just here for sex, and it doesn't feel forced or put on or anything like that. But at the same time, you both know you like each other, you both know the attraction's there, and you're both glad it's there. It's like you have this excuse, but you didn't trick her, right? Having the excuse so it's not her fault and she doesn't feel slutty is good. However, fundamentally, she's there because she wants to be, you're there because you want to be. That has to be the basis. You're not trying to trick anybody into anything. You're not trying to be manipulative. So this is a scene with a completely different girl. And in this case, this is their first face-to-face interaction. They did interact previously in that they were competing, bidding on a racehorse together. And this woman made him pay far more for the racehorse than he would have otherwise. So there's some tension created there. But this is really their first scene getting to know each other.
Oh, you beat us to it.
Did I?
I was trying to nab a filly for my stud.
Sorry?
Thomas Shelby from where?
From Birmingham.
Goodness.
No, not much.
Hey, Carlton.
One thing that he has throughout the interaction with this woman is that he doesn't really care, right? He's not particularly invested. He's willing to be abrasive. He's willing to just cut to the chase. He's willing to be brutally honest. And this is a little wordplay, right? Wordplay is very useful in game. Learning that words have their actual meaning, their literal meaning, their figurative meaning. The more different meanings you see in a word, the more different ways you have to misinterpret it, the more different ways you can make the conversation interesting, the more different ways you can treat things as sexual or as compliments when they may not have in fact been. These are all useful things. This is just a subtle wordplay. She says goodness as like the expression of oh my goodness, whereas he's saying goodness as in either Birmingham or himself is lacking in goodness. Right? But again, he's making the conversation more interesting. He's also playing the bad boy role, which is, that is his character. He's conveying it very quickly, very, concretely and directly and early on in the interaction. There's no beating around the bush here.
I breed racehorses and train them. What is it you do?
I rarely answer questions. That's what I do.
Right? Again, not direct, like I mentioned, not giving direct answers. This could not be any more of an example of not giving a direct answer. But again, get to know you questions are largely bullshit, especially early on. You don't need to answer them. Not necessary. And playing a little bit hard to get is also useful.
So will you consider me?
I will consider you.
You still don't tell me what you do.
Oh, I do bad things. But you already know that.
And then again, in metaphor, will you consider me, right? She's asking literally, will you consider me as a trainer? but she's asking, will you consider me, as in, will you consider a relationship with me? Will you consider seeing me again, etc., right? It's a metaphor. And then I do very bad things, but you already know that. Again, playing the bad boy royal, being very, very clear about it, and also giving disqualifiers, being willing to walk away. Oftentimes, disqualifying builds a lot more attraction and intrigue than qualifying or trying to appease. When you are trying to attract a woman, you're trying to trigger her emotions, not her logic. So logically, he's a bad decision for this woman. Emotionally, he's interesting and stimulating for her, right? So at the start, you're stimulating emotions, you're creating attraction. Later on in the interaction, as we talked about earlier in this video, that's when you're building more connection. But if you try and connect without building attraction first, oftentimes the girl will not be interested in connecting. So this next scene, the same woman has now come to visit him in his office to ostensibly talk about training his racehorse. But he continues to play up the same archetype that was so successful for him. He continues to play the bad boy card, and he continues to care less about the interaction and be more willing to walk away than she is, all of which are attractive qualities. Let's have a look.
So, be my guest.
It's out in the open. What about the police?
What about him?
So again, if you're playing the bad boy, what better date than inviting her to literally the headquarters of where you do racketeering? So, I mean, that's pretty out in the open. And again, it's pretty badass to be like, yeah, what about the police? I don't give a fuck, right? He knows his archetype. He knows what she's attracted to. He knows what she's responding to. And so by all means, play it up, right? When you're talking to a girl, you should, in general, with girls in general, know your value proposition, know the reasons why girls get attracted to you, and steer the conversation in those directions. And if you know for a particular girl what it is about you she likes, why not play up that thing?
I drove into Smallheath. I thought I was going to get murdered. And I mentioned your name. It's like being escorted to see a king.
You came here to get my girl, right?
Right.
And that's just value, right? That's absolute value, right? When the entire nature of how you're interacting with the world changes when you're around a man, that's just pure, actual, legitimate value. Not much to be said from a game standpoint in terms of him saying something or doing something in this moment, but it does go to what is value.
You wanna fuck me, Mrs. Carlton? Perhaps because I represent something to you. We should have this conversation before the booze starts talking for us.
Okay. Now, this is called high risk, high reward, right? I think legitimately he doesn't care, right? To him, this actually is all business. And so he's very willing to lose this. And I think he just wants to have it out there in this case. But it is very effective in the sense that he's showing he doesn't care. He's showing a willingness to lose. He's showing a willingness to be offensive. That said, this could be so offensive she just gets offended and leaves in some cases, right? So high risk, high reward. But between being a guy who gets to the point and a guy who beats around the bush and never gets to the point, getting to the point is better. Most times you'd rather get to the point a lot more subtly than he's doing here. But again, I don't think his actual primary intention is to sleep with her in this case. His primary intention is business. And so in this case, it makes sense. And it does have a positive effect because of that willingness to walk away and willingness not to tiptoe around.
You have a horse.
Yes, I have a horse.
The horse is why I'm here. Purely that. And because you're paying me a lot of money to train your horse, that's why I'm here. Purely that.
Good. Good. Oh, it's toast then. To the horse. To the derby.
And his response here is great. So when you get bad news, so to speak, and again, whether this is bad news to him or not is somewhat debatable. I think he's business first, regardless. But when the girl says she has a boyfriend, or when you find out that for some logistical reason things can't happen between you and the girl, if you suddenly look disappointed and butthurt, that's bad. If you say good because X, Y, Z and just play it off, that is the appropriate response. So his response here of good is the right response, right? Now, obviously, you want to problem solve later and figure out a way to handle whatever negative thing has happened. But in response to the thing, you do not get reactive, you do not get butthurt.
So is that what you say to women?
Only if I don't know what they want.
What if they don't want to fuck?
Then life is simpler.
You want a simple life?
Do I look like a man who wants a simple life, eh?
Okay, so there's a lot there. They're talking about, do you say that to women? And again, this idea that he's happier for them to say no than yes just goes with his frame. And I think there's some honesty in that frame. I think he's actually completely fine either way. He's fine with a yes and fine with a no, and that is a great frame. Right? The idea when you walk up to a girl of thinking like, if this goes well, that's amazing, and it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm down for that. But if it doesn't go well, I just saved myself some time and made my life simpler, and my life is already good. That is an absolutely great frame. It's an absolutely great attitude. So that's already good. Then the question, do you want a simple life? Again, not a direct answer. Key theme of this video, right? Not giving direct answers. It says, do I look like the guy who wants to have a simple life? Asking the question back, etc. And then she says, what do you want? They've been talking about relationships, and then, not spilling the beans, keeping the cards close to the chest. He goes back to what he wants from the racehorse, not about what he wants from the relationship. Again, keeping the mystery, keeping the suspense, keeping the intrigue, not giving direct, boring answers.
They also sent your name to the War Office. You won 2 medals for gallantry.
Does that really impress you, Mrs. Carlton?
Call me May.
And then, of course, call me May, after the discussion of are we going to have sex, is a pretty meaningful statement, because she was just all business, all business, all business, and then backing off on that after that subject has been broached is pretty big. And that's actually the beauty of establishing premise, right? When you've said things that are man to woman in the conversation, when you've made it clear that that's a direction it could go in, well, now everything is seen through that lens, everything is seen through that light, and subtle things can have a much bigger meaning. This next scene is later on at her house when he goes to check on his racehorse. Let's check it out.
Do you have engine oil? Before I set off for Birmingham, the car needs oil.
Sure, my husband kept some in the garage. I can get someone to do it.
This evening or tomorrow?
Oh, we're so far away from anywhere people usually stay over. Especially before cars, when it was just carriages, people used to stay over all the time.
But I have a car.
So this is a little easy because it's a TV show, but ideally this is what you actually want to set up. You want to set up a situation where it makes sense for the two of you to go home together or for you to stay over or whatever. And if anybody's giving the objections to it, it's actually you. And she's the one almost solving the objections or trying to figure out ways to make it make sense. So while this may seem too easy or unrealistic, this actually does happen when you've had really, really good game. Now, obviously, again, TV show, they can write whatever they want. But it's not completely unrealistic. It can be this easy at the end if you've done the proper work earlier on.
Yes.
And you have engine oil?
Probably. But it would be very usual.
And this is a great look into female psychology, right? She clearly wants him to stay over. She can't flat out say it, but she's going to give excuses to make it plausible and make it okay, right? And that is very much how women think oftentimes, right? They socially are not allowed to be slutty, but they want the sex. And so if there's a way to make it just happen or a way to make it convenient, then good things will happen. Great mentality to keep in mind.
Now, do you have a map of the house? Do you have a map? Because I'm not going to be able to find my way in the dark. See, at midnight, I'm going to leave my wing, and I'm going to come find you. And I'm going to turn the handle of your bedroom door without making a sound. And none of the maids will know.
You don't know maids?
They hear the pin drop.
There's a man in the house. They listen. They take turns.
So let them listen.
What he did there, the anticipation of I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, is actually really, really great. But he was subtle about it, right? He said, I'm going to come, I'm going to turn your bedroom door. He didn't say, I'm going to do this and this and this sexual act to you. So he was still subtle about it, but he was also very explicit, and he gave a lot of sort of verbal foreplay. So very, very good technique, the foreshadowing verbal foreplay thing. Also, when the girl is talking in a way that's helpful to you, is talking in a way that sets the frame for you, let her keep talking. It is useful. And then at some point you have to let her win. You could go very, very wrong by when the girl is feeling vulnerable, gloat or make her feel even more vulnerable. You want to bail her out. You want to help her along because, again, she doesn't want to feel slutty. She doesn't want to feel pathetic. So now we come full circle back to the first girl who, came and went and now is back. At this point, she's now married, but she's agreed to meet back up with him, and we'll see how that plays out.
Do I not get a drink?
Please?
You want one?
Yes.
Still whiskey?
Yes.
But other things have changed. Sell vans with your name on at the docks.
Yes, some things have changed.
So oftentimes when an interaction starts, or just at some point in the interaction, there will be awkwardness, there will be tension. Oftentimes, it's better not to go out of your way to relieve the tension. If the girl's not going to leave because of the tension, sitting in the tension, being okay with it, letting her break the tension, oftentimes is a really good step towards getting the girl chasing you. So oftentimes at the start of a date, if there's a little awkwardness and tension, but the girl's not about to leave, just sit with the awkwardness, sit with the tension. Don't be rude, don't be trying to create more of it, but don't go out of your way to break it. Just chill, relax. Oftentimes she'll start in with the, so, how are you doing? So, how was your day? So, that kind of stuff. And she'll start gaming you.
Tommy, I really wasn't sure about coming tonight.
I lit a fire in the bedroom upstairs. My plan was that we'd sit here for a while, talk about old times, drink some whiskey. And I was going to tell you, I hadn't spent a day without thinking about you. And then we were going to go upstairs and sleep together. But just now, on the way to opening the door, I changed my mind.
Okay, that is absolutely fucking brilliant. Assuming you get to the end of it. The risk here is that if she stopped you midway, it would kind of suck. But assuming you got to the end of this is absolutely brilliant. So what did he do? He was very upfront, foreshadowed sex, gave a lot of interest and tension and stuff that's objectionable but tempting in this situation. But then at the very end, he took it all away, saying, I changed my mind. Right? Huge, huge, huge push-pull. Incredibly powerful under the circumstances. Just absolute, beautiful, beautiful game move.
So just have one drink. Tell me how happy you are in New York, and then you can go.
You changed your mind.
So you can go.
And you can see her reaction. That's the kind of reaction a strong disqualifier will get.
As a matter of fact, I am happy in New York. And I am married.
Oh, yeah, he's rich, I know.
And he's sweet. And he's kind to me. So what makes you think that I would have gone to bed with you after one whiskey and some conversation?
I was accounting for 3 whiskeys.
How dare you?
Doesn't matter now, because I've changed my mind.
I came here because you asked me.
Even though he's sweet and he's kind to you.
And now I feel like an idiot.
Well, then go.
Jesus.
And this is, again, high risk, high reward. It's a bit of a, walking the line here, right? But again, being willing to walk away more is very, very strong. And when you know that you have the girl, so to speak, you can do power moves like this. Again, this is quite risky. It's possibly unnecessary Because what he points out here, given that like she already came to visit him in spite of having a husband and in spite of their past, already it's looking pretty good for him. So he doesn't necessarily have to play this high risk, high reward way, but it certainly, could be effective.
But you're still here.
Are you so certain?
But you're still in love with me. I was, but I'm not anymore. You're not armed, Grace, are you?
No, I'm not armed. I don't carry guns. I don't have to.
You don't have a sense of humor anymore either.
What are you talking about?
You get a lot of tension here, right? But usually, if you have high value and a lack of comfort, the girl will tend to stay and give you time to build that comfort. Whereas if you have a lack of value, they will tend to leave. Not always, and he definitely is playing very, very close to the edge. And again, this is from writers and this is a show. So don't take it as a perfect example of perfect game. But these are definitely the tactics of someone who is attractive. Whether being attractive will always work in the real world, not always, because there are comfort factors, there are factors of pushing the limit, there are factors of the girl needing to be consistent to her own self-image and self-esteem, etc. So not to say that something like this would always work or is even perfect or brilliant, but there are certainly elements of it that are very true to life.
Thing is, I hate reunions. I didn't want to sit here for hours talking about nothing and dancing around what we really want to say. So now, I know you're happy in New York. I know your husband's rich and sweet and kind to you. I know you're unarmed. And you didn't come here for sex because you don't love me anymore. And it's only 3 minutes past. Another drink.
And that's absolutely brilliant, right? And that's something you want to do, is when you do create a lot of tension, you want to create a resolution, right? And this girl, like, what's she even supposed to do at this point? Like, what's she even supposed to think, right? It's incredibly intriguing. There's a ton of emotion. There's just got to be a lot going on for her now, which is, can be a very good place to be.
I'll take that as a yes. It's good to see you, Grace.
So you didn't light the fire?
You see, my real plan...
And you see, not giving a direct answer. You didn't light the fire. Now we're going to go in a different direction.
was that we go out. I want to impress you. Now. Do you like Charlie Chaplin?
Yes, I like Charlie Chaplin.
Good. But I bet you've never heard Charlie Chaplin speak.
And then this is actually just a huge demonstration of value. And actually, this is a great technique for a date, by the way, is if you have a date that starts at your place and you actually intentionally leave, builds tons and tons of comfort, tons and tons of trust, makes it seem like it's not, you don't have an agenda, et cetera, et cetera. That used to be one of the absolute things I would do a ton on dates, is invite the girl to come meet me at my place. And we'd go up, I'd grab my wallet or grab my jacket or something like that, and then we'd actually go out. So I'd be intentionally trying to be the one who left the place. And here he built all this sexual tension, and now they're just going to leave and hang out and have a good time, and then, ostensibly probably come back to his place, especially if she leaves some stuff there or whatever. So this is absolutely a great scenario. And then obviously huge DHV. Massive demonstration of value to go introduce her to one of the biggest film stars in the world. So obviously if you have that in your back pocket, for sure use it.
Tommy. Tommy, do you have someone? It's too late, Tommy.
It's a laughing, Grace.
I mean, it's too late. If you'd come with me to New York.
There are things to do.
You mean the it the wrong way.
It couldn't have worked. That was the question.
Now, in a situation like this, it's very clear the girl is very into him, very much wants this to go down, but she's having issues justifying it to herself. What you mainly need to do in this case is just give her a little bit of reassurance and mostly let her get out of her own way, right? And especially avoid saying anything that's a huge red flag. Less is more in these circumstances.
Tommy, do you have someone?
Mother Racehorse. She's gonna win the derby.
So this is the second time she's asked the question, do you have somebody? And the answer is yes, but no in this case. He doesn't really care for the other girl deeply. He's not, worried about that. It's not a threat to her. So as a reasonable answer, as far as she's concerned, the answer may as well be no. But the answer literally is yes. But he answers a different question. He avoids the question so he doesn't have that awkwardness and doesn't give that big red flag that could potentially ruin it right in this moment. And she doesn't actually, want to dig and want to hear a different answer, so she's not going to ask again in this particular case. It is a bit ironic that he says he has a racehorse because the other girl is intimately associated with the racehorse, but that's just his good screenwriting, nothing to do with actual game. But the point here is he needed to tell the girl what she needed to hear. I don't recommend lying to girls, but I do recommend not intentionally raising red flags if you can avoid it. So what are takeaways from Tommy Shelby Peaky Blinders game? Well, number one, you do not need to answer questions directly. Clearly, a big part of what he does is avoiding questions, answering questions with stories, answering questions with anecdotes, answering questions by going back to a previous topic, etc. It keeps a lot of mystery. It makes things a lot more interesting. It also keeps him out of trouble. So that's number one. Number two, he's very direct about sex, but he does tend to frame the sex as though it's whether the girl is interested in it and rather than whether he's interested in it. And so he is keeping a lot of value. What he does is probably too high risk, too high reward to be proper good game. But the fact of the matter is it's coming from a place of extreme willingness to walk away. I think his philosophy is that he'd almost prefer the girl say no because it will keep his life simpler. And the fact that he is that non-needy, he is that willing to walk away, does give him a lot of charisma and does make him very, very compelling. So that's very, very useful. I do think it's still too high risk, too high reward to be actually like really, really good, but it definitely has elements of very, very good. And certainly between getting to the point a little too strongly and not getting to the point, getting there too strongly is definitely the better approach. And then finally, we do have lifestyle factors, right? He is rich and successful. He is a bad boy. There are a lot of things about him that would be very attractive to women, at least for a hookup, if not for something long-term. And then, lifestyle-wise, he does have that long-term potential value as well. So a lot of good things going there. Very plausible that this would be an attractive man and definitely someone you could take some tips from. Do keep in mind it is a TV show, not reality, but TV shows and movies do reflect reality and you can still learn from them. So I hope you enjoyed that and I'll see you next time.